America's two great pastimes collide on this podcast. It is baseball and making money. From the dog days of summer through the October Classic, Greg Bases Peterson's going to be free swinging at the betting board as he tries to hit a grand slam for your bankroll. Now here is GP.
A spectacular Friday to one and all. It is MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson broadcasting from the Zuni Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. We've got a stellar show for you today, as Steve Gardner of USA Today is going to be joining me in the second segment. We're going to talk about a little bit of the early action that we've seen out there in the MLB season so far this year. Going to take a look at some of the teams that he likes, some of the things that he doesn't like, and why we're seeing so many younger players being sent up to the majors as well. We're going to be talking a little bit about the nuts and bolts of baseball in general and how it's affecting these teams as well, because we saw with the Mets being able to bring up Pete Alonso early rather than waiting a few weeks, and just what it's going to mean in general to those of you guys that have future bets and everything like that. So that is going to be a lot of fun. In the final segment, I give you a side and total on every game on today's betting board as we touch them all. But first, I got this question to me posed by a couple people. This isn't going to be going into the Twitter mailbag because this isn't just from one person, but I've had quite a few people ask me how ballpark factors really go into how I handicap these teams, these totals, and everything like that. And I do think that that's really worth getting into, because I know that I've got this one fake Mike Zimmer account that's always talking to me about the Ferns out there at Target Field with the Minnesota Twins and everything like that. And I think that every ballpark has its own uniqueness. I still remember the hill out there with the Houston Astros a few years ago before they took that away. I always thought that that was a unique advantage, being able to play the ball off of the Green Monster in Fenway. Obviously a little bit of an advantage if you're backing the Red Sox at home as well, but I do think that some of these ballparks do play different day to night, and we saw it with the Oakland A's. We're going to be getting into the recap of yesterday in a few minutes, but I noticed that the Oakland A's ballpark just plays so different from day to night. During the daytime, it's very much a hitter's-friendly ballpark. You're able to drive the ball out and everything like that. But then during the nighttime, you have that marine layer. So I think that's worth taking a look at. We noticed that the wind in regards to San Francisco and the new Oracle Park, which it's still weird to say that because I remember when it was like Pac-Bell Stadium, AT&T, and everything like that. But wind really doesn't mean anything in that ballpark. But where wind means a whole heck of a lot, Wrigley Field. Just a couple miles an hour of wind can be a world of difference in that ballpark, and it's worth taking a look at because I know that ESPN has their own ballpark factors. We see it different from year to year. We've obviously got a game at Coors Stadium tonight between the Rockies and the Dodgers. That's obviously the most hitter-friendly park out there in the major leagues, but something that we also noticed last year is that the unders at Coors Field were really cashing like crazy as well, and we've noticed that the totals have went down a little bit in Arizona as well, where we're going to have a home game between the Boston Red Sox and the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think they did something with a humidor, if I remember correctly. I don't know completely offhand what they all did, but I know that they did a couple things to be able to help out the pitchers at that ballpark as well. So those are all things that you want to take a look at. There are plenty of resources and websites, including ESPN, that all break it down. So I do think that ballpark factors are big when taking a look at totals. I don't think that is the end-all be-all. If you have just two gas can pitchers up there on the mound, they'll find a way to give up runs. We saw that in one matchup in particular as we get into a recap of yesterday.
What happened yesterday? Let's go around the bases and find out.
It was absolutely stunning to me that the total in the Tigers versus the Kansas City Royals game closed at 7.5. I actually took the over at 8. I was able to save a little juice there, but the starting pitching in this game was Jacob Junis for the Kansas City Royals, and the Detroit Tigers had out there Spencer Turnbull. Now, I know that the weather wasn't ideal in this game. There was a bit of wind, and it was apparently about 40 degrees. But when you've got bad pitching out there, you just can't take a under of 7.5 or something like that, because we saw the Detroit Tigers being able to win this game by a count of 5-4. Nico Goodrum was able to have a pair of doubles in this game. He now has 6 doubles for the year, by the way. Got to give Goodrum a little bit of credit. Miguel Cabrera was able to walk twice. He's only batting a $148 so far this year, but he's done a good job of being able to get on base. And then for the Kansas City Royals, their bats have been a little bit better than I expected this year. Alex Gordon was able to hit a 2-run home run in the 8th inning. That was able to help out this team. Jorge Soler has been a nice player in the middle of the lineup for this team as well. well. But with both these teams, you could tell that the bullpen is not good. You've got Brad Boxberger currently in the bullpen for the Kansas City Royals. Need I say more? And with the Detroit Tigers, we got a bunch of unproven arms. A couple arms that are proven, though. How about the pitching matchup between Steven Strasburg and Thor, a.k.a. Noah Syndergaard? Syndergaard gave up 2 runs in this game. He did a pretty good job, but Steven Strasburg was even better as he went 6.2 strong innings, gave up only 3 hits, 1 walk, 9 Ks. He was sensational. And the big difference in this game was a Victor Robles home run, his second of the year, as the Mets were shut out for the first time this year. Mets offense in general has looked a whole lot better, but on this day, they just weren't able to get things going against a good starting pitcher. And hey, you know what? The Nats bullpen actually came through on this day as a team that was ice cold from that same city. Well, they came through as well. And the antidote to that, the Baltimore Orioles, as the New York Yankees get an 8-4 win over the Orioles. They were able to really pour it on late. 4 runs in the 6th inning and 3 runs in the 9th inning really propelled the Yankees in this one. Gary Sanchez was able to hit a home run. You had Gleyber Torres going deep twice for this team, and then Luke Voigt went yard as well. This is a Yankees team that's very badly banged up. Miguel Andujar, Giancarlo Stanton, Troy Tulowitzki. The list of injuries go on and on and on for them. I mean, for goodness sakes, right now you've got Clint Frazier out there in the starting lineup, coupled with Tyler Wade, and yet they're still able to get the job done because you do still have Brett Gardner, Aaron Judge, Voigt, Gary Sanchez and company, so you still have some good bats. And you know that with the Baltimore Orioles, well, their bullpen's not very good. As Alex Cobb actually had a decent start in this one. I know that he gave up 2 dingers, but he gave up 2 earned runs in 5.2 innings. That's not a bad outing. But then you had the Baltimore Orioles bullpen, who in 4.1 innings gave up a grand total of 6 runs. Yeah, that's not going to get the job done. I was talking about the A's stadium playing a little bit different during the daytime. Well, during the daytime, this total went over as the Oakland A's were able to knock off the Boston Red Sox, who are now 2-6, by the way, as the A's were able to get this one by a count of 7-3. Steven Piscotty delivered the power. He was able to have 5 RBI in this game, including 4 total hits in all 4 of his at-bats. He had that 3-run dinger that was able to really help out the team. Marcus Semien has been doing a good job of being able to get on base for this team, so gotta like the way that the A's are trending. The Indians were able to get right, as well as Trevor Bauer was going for a no-hitter at one point in this game. He went 7 no-hit innings, but then he had to be pulled because he had 117 pitches already racked up. And then obviously the no-hitter was blown in the 8th and 9th innings. But Cleveland Indians get a nice 4-1 win. Jose Ramirez is still not hitting worth a lick up there at the plate, but he was able to get an RBI in this game. And the Indians in general, they got 7 hits in this game, 2 of which were from Leonis Martin. That's a good sign, but the Toronto Blue Jays just are not doing a very good job of being able to put bat to ball at all. I will say they had a little bit of a rally in the 9th inning, but it just was not good. And speaking of bad offenses, how about the Cincinnati Reds? They are now 1-5. They were completely shut out by the Pittsburgh Pirates by a count of 2-0. Got to give a little bit of credit to Jordan Lyles. He was able to go 5 strong innings. He had 3 walks and gave up 3 hits, but he was able to do a nice job in this game. Nick Kingham was able to get the win. He had 2 innings of relief pitching, and then you had Sterling Marte giving this team a double. As the Pittsburgh Pirates, they were just not driving in runs in this game. They had 10 total hits, but they weren't able to really bring them around. But what you had to like to see for the Pittsburgh Pirates is that their offseason acquisition in Melky Cabrera was able to go 3 for 3 in this game. So that is obviously a very good sign. But for the Cincinnati Reds, Tyler Mahle winds up being a tough luck loser. He goes 6 strong innings, has 5 strikeouts, is not able to get a decision in general. The Reds bullpen in general has been pretty good, but they gave up 2 runs on this day. And speaking of bad bullpens, how about the Chicago Cubs? They are now 1-5 this year. They lose to the Atlanta Braves 9-4. Yu Darvish, another bad outing, 4 innings, gives up 3 runs, 4 walks, 5 hits. We've been talking about pitchers that are having command issues. Yu Darvish at the top of the list. He has got to be on your list of pitchers to fade right now. You also have to be fading the bullpen of the Cubs in general. Carl Edwards Jr. gives up 2 runs. Tyler Chatwood, we all know about his work. He gives up a run. Mike Montgomery gives up 3 runs. Every Cubs pitcher that took the mound gave up at least 1 run. Meanwhile, Max Fried actually looked very good in this start. I was not expecting this from the young guy, but he went 6 innings, had 5 strikeouts, gave up only 1 hit. It was a little bit sullied by the fact that Chad Sobataka, I believe I said that last name correctly, reliever for the Braves, gave up 4 runs while recording only 1 out. This is an Atlanta Braves team that right now is not getting good relief pitching, but you got to give a lot of credit to Fried and being able to give this team a good start. And then the other game that went down, Texas Rangers were able to clobber the LA Angels on the road. This is still in progress as I'm doing this broadcast, but I can tell you right now, Rangers, 5 runs in the first inning, absolutely huge for this team. Very interesting day out there in baseball. You can tell that the A's ballpark is playing a lot differently from day to night. It appears as though Camden Yards is once again a bandbox, especially with the Orioles being a team with some good hitting and some not so good pitching. Cubs overs are doing quite well, and the Cincinnati Reds, they just can't get out of their own way at this point in regards to hitting. So a couple of trends building there, and a trend that I see building, having Steve Gardner on this podcast. USA Today's Steve Gardner is coming up next, and that is right here on MLB Overtime Betting.
Greg is going to the bullpen as he makes a call to the Azuña hotline.
And we're back here on MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson broadcasting from the Azuña Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. Great pleasure to be joined by our next guest. This gentleman does tremendous work for USA Today. You can follow him on Twitter at Steve A. Gardner. It is Steve Gardner. He does a great job as a baseball writer, and he gets a little bit more into the daily fantasy of baseball as well. And Steve, how are you doing?
I'm great, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing tremendous. Thank you. And we're a little bit over a week through the season. I would say we're about a week and change through. And what's been your biggest takeaway from the season so far? Because I can tell you right now, seems like strikeouts are going to be at a all-time high once again this year. I'm just seeing so many of these guys just fan at the plate. It's not even funny.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've had 13 consecutive years of strikeout rates and strikeout totals going up. And yet again, if we thought we couldn't go higher, we can. And we're doing it so far this season. And strikeout rate is one of those things that stabilizes pretty quickly. So if we're this way, unless something really, really changes in the next week or two, we're going to set another record in 2019.
It's absolutely incredible, and I think we hear it every year. We all sit there and we talk about, oh, you know what? Good things happen when you hit the ball. Good things happen when you just make some contact and everything like that. Yet every single year, it seems like strikeout rate goes up. What do you attribute this to? Because I just find it so confusing that these guys just become more and more all or nothing, when we hear so many people complain about baseball has become all or nothing.
I'll tell you what it is, I think, is that we've become, and baseball in general has become so in tune to where players hit the ball that the only place that is safe now is hitting it over the fence, because you see the shifts on the infield. We're seeing already this year some 4 outfield alignments against some of the big power hitters. The whole point of the launch angle revolution was you hit it in the air, you hit it hard, and there are only 3 outfielders out there. Hit the gaps, hit it over the fence. That's where the damage can be done. And now teams are starting to incorporate that into their defenses. So really the only place that's safe is just to clear the fences with them, because that hasn't changed. And so I think that's where more and more players see the opportunity to do damage with their individual at-bats. And that's why they're not choking up on 2 strikes like the players had, 20 years ago or anything like that. I think that's where fundamentally the game has changed. And with pitchers throwing, 95, 97 with all this movement, really the best chance you have for the most part for these players is just take a big swing and hope you barrel it up, and then good things will happen.
Tremendous point there, as we've got Steve Gardner of USA Today joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And something else I've really noticed so far this year, some of these bullpens, they are really giving it up. We saw it with the Oakland A's a couple days ago against the Boston Red Sox. You bring in Fernando Rodney, who over his years, let's face it, he hasn't necessarily been the most locked down reliever in the history of baseball. I think that's fair to say, but then you've got some great relief pitching. The Tampa Bay Rays, even though they lose that game 1-0 against the Rockies a couple days ago, they looked very good themselves with their bullpen. Who are a couple teams with their bullpen that you've been a little bit surprised about for either a good or bad reason? Because I feel like bullpens are such a big part of the MLB today.
The biggest eye-openers are the teams that have been terrible. The Washington Nationals bullpen has been awful. The first 5 games of the season, I think they gave up 14 runs in the 8th inning alone. So, that's a terrible bullpen. The Boston Red Sox bullpen has not been great. There have been several of them where you look at who are the personnel there. They're going fairly cheap in the bullpen. Why in the world isn't Craig Kimbrell on a team? And I think that's kind of the financial reality of baseball these days. Where are the cheap players that you can get at minimum salary? They're relievers, they're bullpen guys, and we're starting to see some of the results of that, where there are some major league hitters that can actually barrel the ball up these days, and they're pretty good. So the relievers, I think, coming out of spring training, just maybe don't have it all together. We'll see some things settle down a little bit, but right now it looks to me like, as a baseball fan, gosh, how many teams are there out there that could use somebody like a Craig Kimbrell?
I am right there with you. And how many teams could use a Dallas Keuchel, too? It absolutely stuns me that he is not signed right now. Out of all the teams out there in the running for perhaps a Craig Kimbrell or a Dallas Keuchel, which one do you think might actually pull the trigger and sign one of these guys? Because I'm just stunned that both these guys are sitting out there on the open market without a contract.
I'll tell you what, Greg, I think because it's lasted this long, and because both of those guys have a draft pick compensation tied to them, the team that signs them loses a first-round draft pick, I think it's going to drag on into June when we get past the draft. They lose that additional compensation that's attached to them, despite the fact that so many teams can use them. I mean, the Yankees, certainly with the injuries they've had in their rotation, with Luis Severino and CC Sabathia, you would think the Yankees would be welcoming somebody else to come and help them there. The Houston Astros, I don't see, they wouldn't lose a draft pick if they re-signed Keuchel because he was there originally. But, they're looking to fill things in. I think pretty much, Atlanta Braves on either one of those guys. Atlanta's had some injuries in the starting rotation, and the bullpen has been kind of shaky with injuries as well. They could use Kimbrell, they could use Keuchel, but yet they've decided that they're not going to spend. The Chicago Cubs are not going to spend, it seems like. So it's a really crazy world out there, and I think a lot of those teams that could use a Keuchel or a Kimbrell feel like they could just piece things together maybe until that draft pick attached to them goes away. Then maybe that's the way to go about it. But they're precious games in the standings that can be lost between now and then.
I'm right there with you, as we do have Steve Gardner joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And because there are so many games in the standings that can be lost, I really applaud what the Mets did by having Alonso go up to the major leagues right away. This is a guy that's been making a big impact for the team. He had a home run in the ninth inning a couple days ago against the Miami Marlins. We saw Eloy Jimenez get signed before the season by the Chicago White Sox. We're seeing more and more of these teams that they're essentially speeding up the process on arbitration and everything like that with these rookies. Do you think that this is a good thing? Because I was very, very happy to see what the Mets did. I was very happy to see what the White Sox did. And I think that it's actually going to pay off not just short term, but long term.
I agree. And I think one of the things that we are seeing in conjunction with that, all the players that are signing, contract extensions, not just Eloy Jimenez, who's basically giving away a couple of arbitration years and free agent years just so he can get security now and doesn't have to play for the minimum for the next 3 years before he gets to arbitration. I think what we're seeing is those players signing extensions because they saw what's happened in the free agent market and how the ultimate holy grail of riches, once you get to free agency, they're just not there. They were there for Bryce Harper. They were there for Manny Machado. But unless you're those guys, you get squeezed like Dallas Keuchel and Craig Kimbrell. And I think some of these younger guys are taking that security that signing the contracts now gives them and saying, okay, I'll give up those huge paydays for a really good size payday right now. And I think what that does with the prospects then is that teams say, okay, we've got these guys like Ronald Acuna was a great example, who has huge potential. We've already seen him perform, and let's lock him up now. And we don't have to worry about that. The players say, okay, I'll take the $100 million or whatever you're offering for the next 6 years. That works for me. And that's why I think we may see, Fernando Tatis sign a long-term agreement before too long, or Peter Alonso sign a long-term agreement before too long, because fewer and fewer, I predict, of these guys that are stars are going to have to worry about what happens when they get to whether there's an extra year of control or not. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I think the Blue Jays are going to have that extra control just because he was hurt this season. But for most of those top prospects that we see come up, I think more of them will sign those long-term deals because it's really not that big a deal from the 6th year to the 7th year of control. They could be signed for a long time before they get to that point.
I think that that's a really good point, and I think that it is something that we're now seeing in baseball a little bit more. And something that we're seeing in baseball right now is some of these lower budget teams being able to have a pretty good start to the season. I mentioned the Tampa Bay Rays a little bit earlier. A team with a big budget that, let's face it, they just haven't gotten off the ground so far is the New York Yankees. Right now, of all teams, while we're doing this broadcast, the Baltimore Orioles lead the AL East. Now, I would be willing to put a pretty nice wager on the Baltimore Orioles not ending up atop the AL East standings, and I feel pretty confident in saying that. But with that said, we've seen the Boston Red Sox scuffle a little bit. We've seen the Yankees as well. What do you make out of these two teams? Because last year, they were the two big bomber teams out there in the American League, along with the Houston Astros and obviously the Cleveland Indians. And thus far this year, they just really haven't gotten things going.
Yeah, and that's what we see sometimes in the first week or week plus of the season. Teams don't always come barreling out of the gate, and Boston has had some issues. Their pitching has been bad. Chris Sale has been bad, and I think that's a real concern. Everything else that's happened to Boston in the first part of the season here, I think we can just kind of brush aside and say they're so talented, they'll be able to overcome whatever stumbles they have out of the gate. Chris Sale, on the other hand, with his velocity being way down from where it's ever been historically, I think there's a little bit of a concern there. And, he was one of those guys that signed the big deal, the contract extension at the beginning of the season. So the Red Sox doctors had to have checked him out and checked him thoroughly. But still, I worry a little bit about what we're seeing. Dead arm periods are common for a lot of pitchers at the start of the season. But this far of a drop in velocity from the guy that you're hanging your hat on as your ace for the next several years has got to be a bit of a concern for Boston. So I think that's one of the things. I think the hitting will come around for sure. As for the Yankees, how can you have all of those guys on the disabled list all at once, the injured list? It's amazing to see so many losses there, not only in the starting pitching rotation, but Giancarlo Stanton goes down. Didi Gregorius was already out. Troy Tulowitzki now go on the injured list. It's been awful. Miguel Andujar, that I think is troubling for the Yankees, but most of those guys, we'll see them fairly soon. They're so talented. I think the Yankees have the best team in the American League and will eventually, they'll rise to the top. But right now, those upside down standings in the AL East, kind of fun to look at.
It is. And you know what? If the Yankees need someone for the middle of the lineup, I'm sure myself and you would both be willing to take one of those contracts, as Steve Gardner joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And I think that was really interesting that you bring up the velocity drop in Chris Sale, because I noticed it with Zach Greinke a little bit as well. He seemed to have righted the ship when he played against the San Diego Padres a couple days ago, and it also helped that he was able to hit the deep ball in that game. I thought that was really interesting, but there were a couple other pitchers that you're noticing that have a little bit of a velocity drop, because I think that that's always very telling at the beginning of the year, because when you see that velocity drop, there are some massive concerns whenever you see it, even just like 1.5 miles to 2 miles an hour.
Yeah, it is. And, I try not to put a whole lot of stock in that, because like I said, you see a lot of pitchers come out of spring training just trying to get back into the groove, and you have those dead arm type periods. But I worry about maybe not so much the loss of velocity, but the lack of control. I think Yu Darvish is one of those guys that you really have to be concerned about, because he walked seven batters in 2 2/3 innings in his opening start. I think that's really concerning. And, for somebody who the Cubs gave an awful lot of money to last offseason and was kind of cited as one of the reasons why they didn't go out and do some spending this offseason, I think that's got to be a huge concern. I would be very worried if I were a Cubs fan, just because they've gotten off to, a horrible start, 1-4, and things could still get worse, I think, for the Cubs.
I'm right there with you, as the Cubs yesterday took on the Atlanta Braves in that one. And the Cubs just seem to be scuffling a little bit as well, because they also do have a lot of relievers that are out as well. We all know that Steve Cishek winds up giving up that game against the Atlanta Braves a couple days ago. They're right now without Xavier Cedeno as well. So they're missing a lot of guys in the bullpen as well. And who are a couple other teams that you have some concerns with regards to their bullpen? Because right now the Brewers are going to be getting back Jeremy Jeffries soon, but I do have a couple of concerns with them just because they're dealing with a lot of injuries. And it just feels like when I take a look up and down these injury lists, it feels like almost every team has like two relievers that's right now on that list.
Yeah, it does. I think even though the Philadelphia Phillies are off to that 4-1 start, they have to be a little concerned. David Robertson just yesterday was extremely wild, walked in the winning run against the Washington Nationals in a game that the Phillies should have won rather easily. I think there are lots of concerns with possibly that Phillies bullpen. There are so many. I think what we're seeing now, one of the things that is interesting to me is so many teams, it seems like, are going with that kind of committee closer situation to where you don't have an established guy in the ninth inning that comes in for the save opportunities. I think it's a smart thing for a lot of teams that don't have, like Minnesota, for instance, that doesn't really have anybody that has the closing experience and is familiar with that role. But it also can lead to a lot of confusion in how, relievers, they like to know the situations they're coming in for. And a lot of times, if you don't know if you're coming in the seventh inning or the ninth inning, it's a little bit more difficult. I've talked to players that say it's a little bit more difficult to prepare yourself. That's one of the things I'll be looking at as we go along is, how do these bullpens shake out? Kansas City, another one, they've had all sorts of guys, go into the late inning roles. They've moved them around. Seattle has done the same thing, partly out of necessity with Hunter Strickland going on the DL. But how these bullpen roles shake out, do they go to a traditional closer or do they continue to have one person close one night and then take the next night off and somebody else close? That to me will be really interesting as we get further into the season.
I totally agree with you as we've got Steve Gardner of USA Today joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And Steve, out of all the teams that you've seen so far this year, what's one or two teams that you think that has been a little bit of a surprise that you think could be a mainstay? Because obviously the Baltimore Orioles, the Seattle Mariners, I point out as being two big surprises. I question whether or not each of these teams can be able to say the Tigers were able to take 2 of 3 from the New York Yankees. But with that said, that was against a very banged up New York Yankees team. But which of these surprises so far do you think might be that one team that might be a mainstay?
One team I haven't made up my mind yet on, but the Seattle Mariners off to that 7-1 start, great run differential. They've looked outstanding. I'm not really sure how they're doing it. So I know the Houston Astros are off to a slower start, but I think they're the class of the AL West. So I'm interested to see how Seattle handles things and how the Mariners are, if they can keep this up for another couple of months or so. The teams, though, that I think really have some staying power, and I'm putting down Seattle a little bit. I'm a little skeptical, but I think the New York Mets look legitimate this season. Great starting pitching. Jacob deGrom has been ridiculously good, defending his NL Cy Young award. And I think the Mets, talked about Pete Alonso coming up, has been a really nice addition to that team. They remade the team in some respects in the offseason with all the guys that they went out and traded for. And I think the Mets have done an awful lot to improve themselves. The team, though, that I'm really intrigued about, I think the most intriguing team so far in the early going is the San Diego Padres. They signed Manny Machado, which was huge, but some of the younger guys, I think this is a team that had consensus the best farm system in baseball the last year or two. And some of those younger guys are now bubbling up to the surface to where you have Fernando Tatis Jr. starts the season in the major leagues. You've got Chris Paddock making the jump from Double-A to the opening day rotation. Those guys are extremely talented. If San Diego can kind of hang in there, I see them similar to last year's Atlanta Braves, maybe arriving a bit too earlier than expected. Just a ton of talent on that team that could really go places. They could do that sooner than most people expected.
Totally agree with you. I really like what I saw out of Chris Paddock in his first start as well. And Steve, I'd like to close it out with this. Where can the good people find you on social media and elsewhere? Because as you could hear from this interview, you give out some just tremendous information.
Well, thanks so much, Greg. You can find me. Best place is on Twitter. I'm at Steve A. Gardner. Gardner, and perfectly willing to talk baseball, fantasy baseball, whatever you want. And I'm on Twitter pretty much all the time. And you can also go to usatoday.com, sports.usatoday.com. You'll see occasional baseball pieces from me on the website there. So check those out. Just was at Bryce Harper's return to Washington the other night, which was a spectacular thing in itself. Check those out. And just hit me up on Twitter and let's talk some baseball.
Tremendous. That was a dynamite spot there from Steve Gardner of USA Today, right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And coming up next, now that we've got a little bit more information, now that we're a little bit more informed, it is time to make a side and total play on every game on today's betting board as we touch them all.
Hey, I'm Steve Heitner, the guy who uttered the famous phrase, "That's gold." And that's the inspiration of my new podcast, That's Gold with Steve Heitner. We talk sports, sports betting, movies, comedy, food, drink, Vegas, music, movies, and more. 5 days a week. Did I say movies twice? Look, guys love it, whether they're hip or worried about breaking a hip. Find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify and Stitcher. That's Gold with me, Steve Heitner.
Welcome back to MLB Overtime. Greg is throwing a gem, so yeah, he better not blow it.
And a special thanks to Steve Gardner of USA Today for joining me in the last segment. He was sensational. He's a guy that I am certainly going to need to get back on this fine podcast as we're back here in the Azuñia Tequila Studios for MLB Overtime Betting. And now it is the final segment of the show, and you know what that means. Time to give you a side and total on every game on today's betting board as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Note that a lot of these plays are going to be locked in. Some of them are not. All of those are going to be noted, and any of the plays that are not locked in, I will let you know on my Twitter feed at unit_81, the approximate numbers that I get, and any changes I make to these as well, also going to be noted on my Twitter page at unit. We start in Coors Field for game 901, 902 on the betting rotation. It is the LA Dodgers in Colorado to face off against the Rockies. Tyler Anderson takes the bump for the Rockies, and Kenta Maeda goes for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are between a -125 and -127 favorite. The Rockies, if you like them, you're getting a plus price of 115. Seeing a 117 out there as well. Total on this game is 10.5. One in which I'm seeing the over and under both being at -110. Another book, I'm seeing the under at -115, the other at -105. This is a spot where I actually do look at the under. What so many people forget about Coors Field last year is, out of all the ballparks out there in the big leagues, I believe it was the best ballpark in regards to the under last year. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that the Colorado Rockies lineup isn't quite what it once was, and you've also got some great pitching out there for the Rockies as well. I don't know if I would consider Tyler Anderson to be the Mona Lisa Vito of pitching, and Kenta Maeda certainly does have his warts as well. But with that said, this is a total that I'm going to take under. I know that the Dodgers are doing a very good job of being able to hit the ball so far this year. We saw them have a complete show of power at the beginning of the year. Cody Bellinger goes into this game with 5 home runs and 13 RBI. Justin Turner, we all know what he's able to do. Kike Hernandez got off to a little bit of a hot start, but they seem to be slowing down a little bit. I think part of that might have been the fact that they were going up against the Giants, who have some good pitching, but Corey Seager is only hitting 130 so far this year. Austin Barnes got off to a white-hot start. He's going back to earth a little bit. Chris Taylor hasn't necessarily been doing great. I do like A.J. Pollock, but David Freese needs to be getting it going as well. And then for the Rockies, some of their bats are off to a little bit of a slow start. Chris Iannetta getting that extra inning home run really helped out for the Rockies, but Nolan Arenado and Charlie Blackmon have been doing decent but not great. I do like what I've seen out of David Dahl in the middle of the lineup, but towards the front half and the bottom half of the lineup, they need to be getting a little bit more going. Brian McMahon off to a little bit of a slow start. Trevor Story isn't doing a good job of being able to get on base, and Ian Desmond is very cold as well. So I do think that this is a total that goes under, but I do feel like a little bit of a better pitcher in this matchup is actually Tyler Anderson. Is familiar with Coors Field. Sometimes he does have a problem with getting hit hard, but last year he was able to do a good job of being able to have some good plus stuff and being able to get strikeouts. In 176 innings, he had 164 strikeouts. He was able to limit the slugging a little bit more last last year than he had in the past, and he seems to be doing a better job of being able to limit his walks. So for that reason, I'm on the Rockies and the under in this spot. Right now, waiting for a little bit of a better price on the Rockies, trying to see if the public seems it's up to more around plus 125 and 130, but I did wind up locking in the under at the favorable juice. 903, 904 on the betting rotation. We are on to Cincinnati, who is on the road to face off against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Going out there for the Pirates is Joe Musgrove, and for the Cincinnati Reds, it is Sonny Gray. Total on this game is 8. The under is shaded at minus 115. The over is minus 105. And if you like the Pittsburgh Pirates, well, you are going to be laying between 124 and 125, and the Reds are between plus 114 and plus 115. I know that Sonny Gray did not wind up winning his first start of the year, but I actually really like what I saw of him during spring training, and his first start of the year only went 2 2/3 innings, so not a very good sample size there. And with Musgrove, really emerged towards the second half of the year last year, but I do still have some questions with him. This is a gentleman that went 6-9 last year, but he does have some good plus stuff. He only had 23 walks in 115 and a third inning, so he does a very good job of being able to limit that. The big question is he going to be able to limit the big hits? Because what I noticed is that Joe Musgrove really pitches the contact. I would say Sonny Gray does a little bit as well, and these are two offenses that really have been scuffling so far this year, and I do think that we're going to see a couple runs in this game, so I think that both these offenses bust out. I'm going to take the total over. With the Cincinnati Reds, you know that Joey Votto, Matt Kemp, and Eugenio Suarez are not going to be held down forever. Dan Diedrich just has not been really doing a good job of being able to hit for this team, though I will say Jose Peraza at the shortstop spot, not doing a bad job along with Jose Iglesias. They've been making a nice little 1-2 punch. You got to think that Yasiel Puig is going to be coming along as well, so I do like the Cincinnati Reds at a plus price. I feel like they've got a couple more weapons than the Pittsburgh Pirates. Adam Frazier is a nice bat at second base. He's hitting over 300, and then they're able to get a little bit of pop in the middle of the lineup from Josh Bell, but he has yet to get a home run so far this year. He's off to a slow start. Corey Dickerson also off to a slow start. And with the Cincinnati Reds, even though they haven't necessarily been getting the greatest hitting in the world, they've actually been doing a good job in their bullpen. I've been a little bit surprised. I have a little bit more faith in the Cincinnati Reds bullpen than I do the Pittsburgh Pirates bullpen. We remember the Pirates blowing a couple games against the St. Louis Reds a few days ago. Because you've got Lorenzo coming out of the bullpen. He does a solid job. I like what Wandy Peralta is able to do as well. And then Stevenson in the back half as well does a nice job. And Zach Duke gave up a win a couple days ago against the Milwaukee Brewers, but he's a veteran arm that I think will come around for this team as well. So for that reason, I am going to be playing this total over, and I'm going to be on the Cincinnati Reds in this spot. I wound up locking in both these plays as well. 905, 906 on the betting rotation. It is the Miami Marlins in town to face off against the Atlanta Braves in the wonderful city of Atlanta. The Braves trot out there Kevin Gausman. Meanwhile, Pablo Lopez is going for the Miami Marlins. If you like the Miami Marlins, well, you were getting plus 150, and as I'm doing this podcast right now, this is getting steamed down. I'm now seeing a plus 140 out there for the Marlins. Meanwhile, for the Braves, you were laying 160 before. Now I'm seeing it steam down to minus 150. Total in this game is 8. And the 8 is between minus 110 both ways, which is interesting because I'm seeing that at one book, and then another book has a total of 8.5 with the under at minus 120, and I'm seeing one book with the under at minus 115. That means that the over is between even money and minus 105. So we are seeing a lot of movement on this game, and I wound up taking the Marlins at that big plus price. I already locked this one in. I am all about the Miami Marlins in this spot, and the reason why is because Kevin Gausman, just coming off the injured list, he really didn't get a full spring training to be able to work through all the kinks, so you got to think that he's going to be a little bit rusty. And something that we're noticing with the Atlanta Braves is that they're trotting out there a bunch of guys that, let's face it, they don't have a lot of major league experience out there in the bullpen. Pablo Lopez hasn't necessarily been great for the Miami Marlins, but he's not a bad pitcher. He does give out a couple too many free passes. In 59 innings last year, he gave out 18 walks. He's not necessarily a big swing and miss guy, but he does a good job of being able to keep the ball in the ballpark. The Atlanta Braves have been getting some good offense up and down the roster, but I wouldn't say that they have necessarily the guys mashing that they did last year. They were able to have a nice comeback win over the Chicago Cubs a couple days ago, in which John Lester started in that game, and you got to like what Ozzie Albies Hayes, Ronald Acuna Jr., Freddie Freeman and company are doing for the team, but we've noticed that Nick Markakis has come back down to earth a little bit. I love what Dansby Swanson is doing out there in the 8-hole, but Josh Donaldson needs to kick things into gear himself. And then when you take a look at what the Miami Marlins are doing, I actually like the way that Sterling Castro is swinging the bat. 2 home runs, batting over 300 so far. He's been doing a nice job. Curtis Granderson seems to be having a little bit of a career rebirth. He's been doing a good job at the top of the lineup as well. JT Riddle has already went deep a couple times so far this year. You've got Neil Walker in the lineup as well. Been a little bit cold, but I still like the way that his bat is able to provide something. And Lewis Brinson is hitting above 200 people, so that's a good thing as well. So I do think that the Miami Marlins are going to be able to get to a rusty Kevin Gausman in this situation. They're going to be able to dive in the bullpen, and I think that they're going to score some runs in this game. So for that reason, I am on the Miami Marlins with a plus price. Already locked that one in, and I'm going to be playing this total over. I'm right now in wait-and-see mode on the over since I'm noticing that a lot of money is coming in on the under as I do this podcast. Game 907, 908 on the betting rotation. The Chicago Cubs are in town to face off against the Milwaukee Brewers in a place that many people have called Wrigley North for quite a while. Hopefully that is changing with myself being a Brewers fan. But going out there for the Milwaukee Brewers, Brandon Woodruff, and he's going to be facing against Jose Quintana. And the total on this one I am seeing is 8. The over is minus 120 in one shop. So I'm seeing the other two with the over at minus 110, which means that the under at those shops also minus 110. And with the over of minus 120, that comes with an under of even money. And if you like the Milwaukee Brewers in this spot, you're laying between minus 125 and minus 129. If you want to take a shot with the Cubs, you're getting between plus 115 and plus 119. Jose Quintana is just one of those guys that I have some question marks with. There are times where this guy is just absolutely dealing and he is lights out. There are other times where he is just walking guys left and right. I don't know what we're going to necessarily get out of him. I think that Brandon Woodruff is going to be able to give a quality start for the Milwaukee Brewers. Then again, he doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of starting experience under his belt. In his first start of the year, he looked very solid, but you take a look at what he did last year. In his 19 appearances, he had only 4 starts. Did a very, very good job of not getting hit too hard, and he's a guy that sometimes gives out a couple too many walks. But with that said, I do like what I see out of Woodruff in general, and I absolutely hate what the Chicago Cubs bullpen has been doing. They gave up a couple games in that series against the Atlanta Braves. Right now, they've got one of the worst bullpens in all of baseball because Xavier Cedeno and Brandon Morrow are out of the lineup. But with that said, on the other end for the Milwaukee Brewers, Brent Suter is going to be pretty much out for a very long time for this team. And then you've got Corey Knebel and Jeremy Jeffress right now on the injured list as well. So their bullpen, though it is very deep, is currently playing with some injuries as well. And Christian Yelich and company for the Milwaukee Brewers are just doing an absolutely sensational job so far this year. Yelich already has 4 home runs, 8 RBI. He was able to hit a home run in 4 straight games. You got like what Lorenzo Cain is providing at the top of the lineup. And then with the Milwaukee Brewers, you've got the usual suspects like Ryan Braun, Travis Shaw and company. Jose Aguilar got off to a little bit of a slow start this year, along with Mike Moustakas. Aguilar seems to be busting out of it a little bit more. And then Orlando Arcia at the 8 spot has been doing just absolutely awful. But when you take a look at the Chicago Cubs, Javi Baez is doing a nice job of being able to get on base along with Wilson Contreras. You still got Anthony Rizzo, who's doing a nice job for this team as well. David Bodie has been providing this team with some production as well. So up and down the lineup, I think that we see a pair of lineups that are going to be able to score some runs in this one. So I'm going to wind up taking this total over. And with the way that the Cubs bullpen has been performing, I just cannot put my chips in the middle. Right now, I'm in wait-and-see mode with the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm trying to see if some public money comes in on the Cubs, so that way I can get more of a minus 115 or minus 120 price. I'm trying to see where this total goes as well, if I can get a little bit more favorable juice on the over of 8.5. But with that said, I'm going to wind up playing this total over, and I am on the Milwaukee Brewers in this spot, waiting for some more favorable lines, though, at the moment. 909, 910 on the betting rotation. It is the Toronto Blue Jays going to Cleveland to face off against the Indians. Shane, don't call me Justin Bieber on the hill for the Cleveland Indians, and Tyler Thornton goes for the Toronto Blue Jays. If you like the Blue Jays, you're getting a plus price of between 138 and 140. If you like the Indians, you're laying between 148 and 150. Total on this game is 7. The over is minus 120, and the under is even, and that is pretty steady across the board. I actually do like Shane Bieber as a starting pitcher. He's not a guy with big swing or miss stuff. He's not necessarily a guy that's going to go out there and he's going to do flashy stuff, but He just knows how to get outs. And then Thornton looked very good in his first start of the year. He had a whip of .4. He had a shutout essentially going in that first start against the Detroit Tigers. He was also facing off against the Detroit Tigers lineup. Now the Cleveland Indians, they might as well be trying out the Detroit Tigers lineup, because right now on the 10-day injured list, you've got Francisco Lindor, Jason Kipnis, as well as Bradley Zimmer. But you still have Hanley Maris, a guy that's been able to hit a pair of home runs for this team. Carlos Santana is hitting over 400 in the middle of the lineup. I really like what he's able to provide. And then with the Indians as well, you got to think that guys like Jose Ramirez at the top of the lineup are going to be able to start to swing the bat as well. With the Toronto Blue Jays, I still have some questions with this team. Randall Grichuk has not really been getting out of his own way so far this year. McKinley out there in left field, batting below 200. Billy McKinley just not getting the job done there. Lourdes Gurriel hasn't been doing a lot. If you take a look at the Blue Jays, I would argue that their best hitter right now is Freddie Galvis. Justin Smoke is a guy that's able to provide some power as well, but he hasn't necessarily been doing a spectacular job of being able to get on base, along with Drury at the top of the lineup as well. I do think that this is a total that's going to go over, just because with the Toronto Blue Jays, I still do have some serious questions with regards to what they're going to be able to get out of their bullpen, and Justin Smoke is currently day-to-day as well, so I don't know whether he's going to be playing in this game or not. If he doesn't, that's just more reason to be able to back the Cleveland Indians in this spot. So I wound up taking the Indians. I was able to lock in a price of minus 140 offshore. I still advise to play at minus 150. If this gets past, like, I would say 165, then I would say that there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays. And adding to that as well, I am on this total over, and I did wind up locking in that over as well. I advise an over at either 7 if you're able to get some decent juice, or a 7.5 if you're able to find it at plus money as well. I do think that the Indians are going to be able to bust through and score some runs in this game. 9-11, 9-12 on the Vegas betting rotation. It is the Oakland Swingin' A's going on the road to face off against the Houston Astros. On the bump for the Swingin' A's, it is Frankie Montas. And then for the Houston Astros, they trot out there Colin McHugh. The total on this one is 8. I am seeing one book that has it a little bit shaded to the over at minus 115, but around Vegas right now, I'm seeing minus 110 on both the over and the under. And then if you like the Houston Astros, you're going to be laying between minus 155 and minus 160. If you want to take a shot on the A's, you're getting between plus 145 and plus 150. And I do like the Oakland A's in this spot. The offense is once again going for this team. Steven Piscotty was able to hit a home run against the Boston Red Sox. This is a offense that just has so many guys that are able to crush. Marcus Semien at the top of the lineup, doing a great job of getting on base. He's hitting over 300. Chris Davis already has 5 home run and 9 RBI on the season. This is a A's team that in general just really has things going, because other than Fernando Rodney, who blew a game against the Boston Red Sox a couple days ago, their bullpen arms are once again back in full force. Meanwhile, with the Houston Astros, they've got a bunch of guys that are right now struggling, and this is even with the Houston A's having guys like Mark Canha and Profar that are struggling, that they're getting their bats going. Meanwhile, with the Houston Astros, Alex Bregman just really hasn't gotten out of his own way. We saw him get shut out in Arlington against the Texas Rangers a couple days ago. Not a redeeming quality right there. Jose Altuve in a little bit of slump. Michael Brantley hitting just above the Mendoza line. Yuri Gurriel, he's doing okay, and I like what Tyler White's able to provide for the team, but Matt Sassy has not gotten a single hit so far this year. That was at least entering into Thursday evening. Just not a lot of redeeming qualities there. The Houston Astros pitching staff seems to be a little bit down from what it's been in past years, as well as we're noticing that Beacock and McHugh are right now in the starting lineup because Lance McCullers is on the disabled list. Who knows when he's going to be coming back. And the Oakland A's are doing all this with Matt Chapman being day-to-day and Nick Martini currently being on the injured list along with Matt Olson. They just keep on trotting out their guys left and right. And I think that they're going to be able to get to a little bit of a downtrodden Houston Astros pitching staff that, let's face it, just is not performing very well. And the offense haven't really been able to get up off the mat either. I do think that the Oakland A's are going to be able to score some runs, and I think that the Astros aren't going to be getting shut out once again. I just think that that would be a little bit unreal. I'm currently waiting to see if this juice gets a little bit more favorable on the over, but I've already locked in the Oakland A's at plus 150. I think that there's a lot of value here on the A's with this nice plus price. So the A's and the over, the plays here. 9-13, 9-14 on the betting rotation. It is the Texas Rangers going on the road to face off against the Los Angeles Angels. Taking the hill for the Texas Rangers is going to be Lance Lynn, and Felix Pena is going to go for the LA Angels. The total on this game I am seeing is 8, with the over shaded between minus 115 and minus 120, depending on where you look. That means that the under is between even money and minus 105. If you like the Texas Rangers, you're getting between plus 120 and plus 125 on the market. If you are trying to lay it with the LA Angels, that is between minus 130 and minus 135. This is a spot where I just have to fade Felix Pena. This is not a good starting pitcher whatsoever. I just am not bullish on him. In his first start of the year, he did not look very good. 3.2 innings. He wound up getting roughed up. He only had 1 walk, but he wound up giving up 4 runs in that start. Last year with the Angels, he just didn't have too many good starts. He had 17 starts last year, and he only went 92 and 2/3 innings in that time period, giving up 28 walks and an ERA above 4. He really lent himself to hard contact as well, which is why I do trust Lance Lynn a little bit more in this spot. I know that Lance Lynn isn't necessarily a great pitcher, but he is a veteran. He does a good job of being able to maneuver out of some situations. Now, he got roughed up in his first start as well. I will be saying that. With the Rangers in his first start with 5.2 innings against the Cubs, he wound up giving up 7 runs in that game. His ERA is 11.12. That's not very redeeming, but with that said, the Angels, they're a team that they're just not hitting right now. Cole Calhoun barely over the Mendoza line right now. Albert Pujols hasn't really gotten things going. Mike Trout is Mike Trout, but not even he is really ripping the cover off the ball right now. Zach Cozart is absolutely awful. There's just not too many redeeming qualities with this team. Andrelton Simmons is struggling. Jonathan Lucroy's actually been doing a good job of being able to get on base, but Borges, oh man. And then with the Texas Rangers, you've got Asdrubal Cabrera, who's already got 3 home runs so far this year. Elvis Andrus doing a good job of being able to get on base. I look at what Sin Chu Chu is able to provide this team as well. And hey, even Joey Gallo is getting on base with things other than a home run. I mean, it's stunning. It really is, but he's been able to do so. Noah Mazzara in the middle of the lineup has been providing some pop. Hunter Pence has been a nice addition in the offseason, so I think that you've got more redeeming qualities with the Texas Rangers, and if the Rangers do get in a situation where they have a lead, I like the way that Jose Leclerc is able to close out games as well, and I do think that Jesse Chavez is going to be able to do a little bit of a better job in middle relief than he has at the beginning of the year. So in this game, I'm going to be on both the Texas Rangers and the over. I'm in a little bit of wait-and-see mode to see if I can get a little bit of a better line, hoping I can get a little bit of better juice on both the over and the Texas Rangers with a plus price. But with that said, I'm going to be on both these plays. 9:15, 9:16 on the betting rotation. It is the San Francisco Giants playing host to the Tampa Bay Hotshell Rays. Taylor Glasnow is going to be taking the hill for the Tampa Bay Rays, and Derek Rodriguez goes for the Giants. Total I'm seeing on this game is 7. The over is minus 115, and the under is minus 105 across the board. If you like the Tampa Bay Rays, well, you're going to be laying between minus 120 and minus 127. Meanwhile, the Giants are between plus 110 and plus 117. Derek Rodriguez, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated pitchers out there in baseball. He doesn't necessarily have wipeout stuff, but he does a good job of being able to limit hard contact and just being able to get outs. He's a perfect pitcher for, I don't know what they're calling it now. It used to be PNC Park. It used to be AT&T, and now it's Oracle Park apparently, so that's where he's going to be pitching in San Francisco, but he does a very good job at that park, whatever they're naming it. And both these teams have been ice cold in regards to their bats. I like what Austin Meadow provides at the top of the lineup for the Tampa Bay Rays. He already has a pair of home runs. Kevin Kiermaier seems to be coming around with the bat. And then for the infield for the Tampa Bay Rays, I will say that a minor surprise is Yandy Diaz already having a home run and hitting over 300. But I do think that this is a spot where you got to look under. The Giants don't have a whole lot going with their bats right now. Brandon Belt has a pair of home runs. I like what Evan Longoria brings in the middle of the lineup, but you really don't have a lot of faith in guys like Duger and Joe Panik being able to provide a lot of offense for this team. They brought in Kevin Pillar. He hasn't been hitting for this team. Eric Kratz, he was nice with the Brewers last year, but what is he really going to give you? There's just not a whole lot that you can write home about with either of these teams on offense. I do like the way that G-Man Choi is able to hit for the Tampa Bay Rays as well, but even with Diaz, who I mentioned, he's day-to-day, so we don't even know if he's going to be going in this game. If you take a look at the Rays, they've got a lot of guys that are currently day-to-day. They don't necessarily have anyone on the injured list, but it's just anyone's guess as to what they're going to be trotting out there with the lineup. And I do think that with both these teams having very good bullpens and both these these teams having some good starting pitching. I don't know if I'm quite sold on Glasnow, but he seems to be coming around. This seems to be a good spot for the under. I just trust the Giants a little bit more in this spot because they are at home. And I do think that Rodriguez is the better starter in this spot. So I'm going to be taking a plus price on the Giants and the under. But with that said, right now, waiting for better numbers on both of these. 9-17, 9-18 on the betting rotation. The Philadelphia Phillies play host to the Minnesota Twins. Jake Odorizzi is going to be going on the mound for the Twins. Nick Pivetta goes for the Philadelphia Phillies. If you like the Phillies, you're going to be laying between minus 140 and minus 150, seeing a little bit of a volatile number here. If you like the Twins, you're getting between plus 130 and plus 140 total on this one. I am seeing at two shops, the total is 8.5, with that shaded to the under between minus 115 and minus 120. That makes the over between minus 105 and even money. And then at another shop, I am seeing a total of 8. Over on that one is minus 115. Under is minus 105. What we've noticed with the Phillies so far this year is that they are completely hitting the cover off the ball so far. Bryce Harper has been a nice addition for this team. JT Realmuto is in the 5-0 for this team. Andrew McCutchen seems to be getting back to his old ways as well. You gotta like what all these guys are doing. Maikel Franco has been sensational. He already has 3 home run and 8 RBI so far this year. And then with the Minnesota Twins, they've been a little bit more bearish with their bats, but they did bring in Nelson Cruz in the offseason. He's already got a home run for this team. You have to think that the Twins were able to get a little bit of confidence with that 7-6 win over the Kansas City Royals that they were able to get in comeback fashion a couple days ago. Max Kepler not doing a whole lot at the top of the lineup. I do like what Polanco provides at the shortstop spot, though. Eddie Rosario needs to get his head out of his rear end, and so does Marwin Gonzalez. But with that said, you've also got Adrianza, who I think is going to start to come around for this team as well. So this is a spot where I'm going to be taking a look at the over just because the Phillies have such great hitting, and they've got such poor bats right now that's not even funny. And I wound up taking this total at over 8.5 at even juice, so I already locked that one in. And I am noticing that the steam is coming in on the Phillies. I already locked in the Phillies as a play myself. I just don't think that the Minnesota Twins back half of the rotation is going to be able to hold up in this one. Jake Odorizzi had a good start to the year, but this is a guy that really has some command issues as well. And with the way that the Phillies are hitting just top to bottom, I think that he's going to get chilled in this one. So for that reason, I am on the Philadelphia Phillies and the over in this spot. Both these plays locked in. 9-19, 9-20 on the betting rotation. The Arizona Diamondbacks play host to the Boston Red Sox. For the Diamondbacks, we've got Zach Godley going on the mound. Meanwhile, for the Boston Red Sox, Rick Porcello. Total on this one I'm seeing is 9. This under is minus 120. The over is even. And if you like the Boston Red Sox, you're laying 130 across the board. If you like the Diamondbacks, you're getting plus 120. We saw in his first start of the year, Rick Porcello really get touched up by the Seattle Mariners, and he's been a little bit of an enigma throughout his career. He either goes out there and he gives you a lights-out performance, or he goes out there and he just lays a complete turd. You just don't know what you're going to get from game to game. And Zach Godley, he just has had stretches in his career where he's looked really good. There have been other stretches where he's not looked so good. In his first outing of the year, he wound up going 5.1 innings. I believe he gave up 7 runs in that one. He allowed opponents to hit 348 off of him. And last year, he was very much up and down as well. He went 15 of 11. He was able to get over a strikeout per inning, but he really lent himself to contact. Opponents at 260 off of him. What I will say, though, is that Arizona is now becoming a little bit more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark because they have made some adjustments to Chase Field. So for that reason, I am on this total under. I do think that the Boston Red Sox are starting to right the ship. I know that they lost to the Oakland A's yesterday, but the day before they were able to get a little bit of a gift, and they were able to get to Fernando Rodney. Obviously, Dustin Pedroia is on the 10-day injured list, but with the Boston Red Sox, you do still have a lot of good bats out there, like your J.D. Martinez's, Xander Bogaerts, Mookie Betts. Jackie Bradley Jr. is a guy that I think is going to be starting to come around for this team. And with the Arizona Diamondbacks, I will say that they have a bunch of guys in the lineup that are hitting. Adam Jones has been a nice addition. He is hitting over 300. He already has 3 home runs. Dean Peralta is both getting on base and hitting for power. Ketel Marte has been doing a nice job for this team. But I do think that Rick Porcello is going to be in a little bit of an elixir for this team, and we saw the Diamondbacks really come back to earth a couple days ago when they scored only 1 run against the Padres. So I do think that they're in for a little bit of a cool down, and I do like the way that the adjustments have been made to Chase Field in recent years, allowing pitchers to be a little bit more potent in that park. So for that reason, I'm going to wind up taking the Boston Red Sox and the under in this spot, and I've already locked in both of these plays. We move on to 9:21, 9:22 on the betting rotation. It is the Seattle Mariners on the road to face off against the Chicago White Sox. Going for the Chicago White Sox, you've got Reynaldo Lopez, and then this is going to be an adventure to say all year long. For the Seattle Mariners, Yusei Kikuchi. The total on this game is at 8. The over is currently the more favorable juice in this spot, as the over is between even money and minus 105. The under is between minus 115 and minus 120, depending on your shop. Right now, the Mariners are between a minus 120 and minus 127 favorite, and the Chicago White Sox are between plus 110 and plus 117. I've heard some very good things about Kikuchi. He has some electrifying stuff, and in his first outing, he looked pretty good for this Seattle Mariners team. And meanwhile, Lopez, he got a little bit touched up in his first start against the Kansas City Royals. He's an up-and-coming arm, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to put it all together. There's going to be some inclement weather out there in Chicago, so that is going to help a little bit in regards to the pitchers. But with the Seattle Mariners, right now they've got quite a bit of their relief pitching on the injured list. Hunter Strickland is going to be out for a very long time after he looked awful in blowing that game against the Boston Red Sox. And Sam Tuivailala, I'm sure I just said that wrong, is currently on the 10-day injured list as well. Edwin Encarnacion is right now day-to-day. We don't know whether he's going to go. Meanwhile, for the Chicago White Sox, John Jay is still on the injured list. But even with that, I am all about the Mariners, and I am all about the over in this spot. The Seattle Mariners have been ripping the cover off the ball. The one game in which they didn't so far this year was that game against the LA Angels a couple days ago, and they were still able to get the win in that spot. Mitch Haniger is hitting over 300 towards the top of the lineup. Domingo Santana has been sensational. He's hitting nearly 350. He's hitting for some power. Jay Bruce's bat seems to be coming around. Tim Beckham has been ripping the cover off the ball along with Ryan Healy. Daniel Vogelbach doing a nice job as a little bit of a platoon DH, and D. Gordon does a nice job of being able to get on base as well, along with Malik Smith. I mean, top to bottom, you're looking at a Seattle Mariners team that's doing a great job. Then with the White Sox, they're not as consistent with the way that they get on base, but they were able to really touch up Corey Kluber 2 days ago, as they were able to get an 8-3 win there. I really like the way that Yohan Moncada has begun the year. He's batting .450. We all know that he has some pop in the bat. So does Jose Abreu, who's hitting 300. He's already got 7 RBIs so far this year. Garcia at the top of the lineup has been doing a nice job. They bring in Yonder Alonso in the offseason. He and Eloy Jimenez haven't necessarily been hitting, and Daniel Polka, quite honestly, has been absolutely awful for this team so far this year. But with the way the top of the lineup is going, I do think that the White Sox are going to be able to get a couple of runs. So I'm going to play this total over, and I do think that we might see a little bit more favorable juice, and we actually might see this total come down to 7.5, because I'm noticing a lot of steam on the under with the way that the weather is out there in Chicago, but I'm not too afraid of it. I'm going to take this total over. I'm not locked it in quite yet because, like I said, waiting for better numbers, but I have locked in the Mariners. I do think that this is a team that is playing some very good baseball. They're off to a 7-1 start. And while I think they're going to eventually come back down to earth, I don't think it's going to be against the White Sox. So Mariners locked in. Over is going to be locked in the morning. Those are my plays there. And our final game on the betting board, 923, 924. It is the San Diego Padres in St. Louis face off against the Cardinals. Jack Flaherty goes for the Cardinals. Meanwhile, for the San Diego Padres, oh gosh, this is a tough last name to say. Nick Margevicius. I hope I said that correctly. Nick Margevicius. We're going to go with one of them. Well, whoever it is, he's going on the mound for the San Diego Padres, and currently we're seeing the Padres as an underdog. It has been steamed up to the Cardinals being between a minus 158 and minus 165 favorite. If you want to take a shot on the Padres, you're getting between plus 148 and plus 155. Total on this one, I'm seeing at one shop is 8 with the under at minus 120 and the over even money. At 2 other shops, I am seeing the over of 7.5 between minus 120 and minus 125. That means that if you want to go under 7.5, you're either getting even money or you're getting a plus price of plus 105. I do feel like Jack Flaherty, after he got a little bit roughed up in his first start against the Milwaukee Brewers, is going to be able to get up off the mat and have a nice start in this one. The San Diego Padres do have some nice bats in their lineup, but they've been very inconsistent, to say the least, so far this year. I really like what Will Myers is able to provide. He's already hit a pair of home runs so far this year. Eric Hosmer, not necessarily been hitting for power the past couple years, but he does a very good job of being able to put bat to ball. We saw Manny Machado be able to get his first home run of the year against the Arizona Diamondbacks as well, so that was a little bit encouraging for the San Diego Padres. But what are you going to be able to get out of guys like Hunter Renfroe, Manuel Margot, Fanmil Reyes has been absolutely awful so far this year. Ian Kinsler's off to a cold start. I just have much more faith in the Cardinals being able to rake. You've got Paul Goldschmidt, who's off to a very good start this year. Colton Wong has been ripping the cover off the ball. He was a big reason why the Cardinals were able to win their pair of extra inning games against the Pittsburgh Pirates the past couple days as well. Bader at the bottom of the lineup has been able to provide a little bit of something, and they're doing this all with Yadier Molina batting below 100, along with Jose Martinez not really getting the job done either. Matt Carpenter off to a little bit of a slow start, and I think that Paul DeJong is going to be able to get things going. And I do think that Margevicius is a little bit prone to having a little bit of a bad outing. This is a total in which I locked in with the over, and I do think that the St. Louis Cardinals are going to be able to really hold the Padres bats at bay, while they're going to be able to get a very good outing in their first home game of the year as well. So for that reason, I'm actually going to ride with the run line here with the Cardinals. Across Vegas, I'm seeing a run line of plus 125 with the Cardinals, and I wound up locking it in right there. So in this game, I am all about the St. Louis Cardinals run line, and I'm on the over. Both these plays have been locked in, and that locks in another great edition of MLB Overtime Betting. A big thanks to our guest Steve Gardner of USA Today for joining me in the second segment. And if you like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you ever have a question for the podcast, feel free to tweet it in at GNet_81. I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow and every day throughout the baseball season. And you guys have a successful and profitable one. Thank you so much for tuning in.